Most people are afraid of being alone, not because they are weak, but because silence forces them to meet the person they have been avoiding. When the phone stops ringing, when the music fades, when the crowd disappears, there is nowhere left to hide. There is only you, and that is exactly where your power begins. The world teaches you to seek approval. It tells you that your value depends on how many people notice you, praise you, follow you, or stand beside you. But the strongest people in history did not become powerful because they were constantly surrounded by others. They became powerful because they learned how to stand alone. Being alone is not a punishment, it is a test. Can you sit in silence without running away? Can you face your fears without distractions? Can you keep working when nobody is watching? Can you remain disciplined when there is no applause? That is where real strength is built. Anyone can feel motivated in a crowd. Anyone can feel confident when they are being praised. But when you wake up early and no one knows, when you keep studying and no one notices, when you keep training and no one is cheering, you are building something that cannot be taken away. You are building character. Solitude reveals the truth. It shows you your weaknesses, your excuses, your doubts, and your fears. At first, that truth is uncomfortable. Most people run from it. They fill every empty moment with noise because they are afraid of what they might discover. But if you stay, if you remain in that silence long enough, something remarkable happens. You begin to understand yourself. You realize that many of your fears were illusions. You realize that you do not need constant validation. You realize that your worth was never dependent on the opinions of others. And once you learn that lesson, you become difficult to control. A person who is comfortable alone is not desperate for attention. A person who trusts himself is not easily shaken by criticism. A person who has faced his own mind is not afraid of challenges. That is the power of being alone. Solitude also teaches you discipline. When no one is watching, your choices reveal who you really are. Do you still do what is necessary? Do you still keep your promises to yourself? Do you still move forward when the results are invisible? Every time you choose discipline in solitude, you strengthen your mind. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen your focus. Every time you continue without recognition, you strengthen your character. And one day, people will see your confidence and wonder where it came from. They will see your calmness under pressure. They will see your focus when others panic. They will see your strength when others give up. What they will not see are the lonely mornings, the silent nights, the moments of doubt, and the countless times you chose growth over comfort. The strongest relationship you will ever build is the one with yourself, because at the end of every victory and every failure, you are still there. If you can learn to trust yourself, respect yourself, and enjoy your own company, you will possess a kind of freedom that no one can give and no one can take away. So do not fear being alone. Use it. Let solitude sharpen your mind. Let silence strengthen your spirit. Let discipline shape your character. Because the moment you stop fearing your own company is the moment you become truly powerful. And the person who can stand alone with peace in his heart will never again be controlled by the noise of the world. Solitude is not loneliness. These two experiences may appear similar from the outside, but they are completely different in their nature and their impact on the human spirit. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being disconnected from others, while solitude is the conscious choice to spend time with yourself in order to understand who you truly are. One drains your energy and the other restores it. One is filled with emptiness and the other is filled with possibility. Understanding this difference can change the way you look at your life, because many people spend years trying to escape being alone without realizing that the very thing they fear could become their greatest teacher. From the moment we are born, we are surrounded by voices telling us who we should become. Parents shape our earliest beliefs. Teachers tell us what success looks like. Friends influence our behavior. Society constantly presents new standards for beauty, wealth, achievement, and happiness. Day after day, these external influences become so loud that we gradually stop hearing our own inner voice. We begin making decisions based on expectations rather than convictions. We chase goals because they impress others instead of fulfilling ourselves. Over time, we become strangers to our own minds, living lives that look successful on the outside while feeling disconnected on the inside. Solitude creates the space to reverse that process. When you deliberately step away from the constant noise of the world, something remarkable begins to happen. At first, the silence feels uncomfortable because there are no distractions to hide behind. There is no conversation to fill every empty moment, no endless stream of notifications demanding your attention, and no audience watching your every move. You are left alone with your thoughts, your memories, your fears, and your dreams. This can feel unsettling because it forces you to confront parts of yourself that you may have ignored for years. Yet it is only through this honest encounter that genuine self-discovery becomes possible. Many people spend their entire lives avoiding themselves. They stay constantly busy because stillness feels unfamiliar. Every free moment is filled with entertainment, social media, television, or endless conversations. These distractions provide temporary comfort, but they also prevent deeper reflection. Without moments of silence, there is little opportunity to ask important questions. What truly matters to me? What kind of person do I want to become? Which beliefs are genuinely mine, and which have simply been borrowed from others? Solitude offers the freedom to explore these questions without pressure or judgment. As the days of quiet reflection continue, your mind gradually becomes clearer. The endless mental clutter begins to settle, much like muddy water becoming transparent when left undisturbed. You start recognizing patterns in your behavior that once seemed invisible. You notice the fears that have quietly shaped your decisions. You discover habits that no longer serve your growth. You begin identifying the dreams that have remained hidden beneath years of responsibility and expectation. These realizations are rarely dramatic. They arrive gently, one insight at a time, each revealing another piece of who you truly are. Self-discovery also requires honesty, and honesty is difficult when surrounded by constant approval or criticism. In solitude, there is no need to perform for anyone. There are no roles to play and no masks to wear. You no longer have to appear stronger, smarter, or happier than you actually feel. This freedom allows you to acknowledge your weaknesses without shame and your strengths without arrogance. You begin accepting yourself not as the person others expect you to be, but as the person you genuinely are, with all your imperfections, talents, doubts, and aspirations. The more time you spend in meaningful solitude, the more confident you become in your own judgment. Decisions are no longer driven by the fear of disappointing others or the desire to gain approval. Instead, they are guided by values that have been carefully examined and consciously chosen. This quiet confidence does not seek attention because it does not depend on recognition. It grows from knowing yourself deeply enough to remain steady, even when opinions, circumstances, and expectations continue to change around you. Silence reveals the truth that noise hides because truth rarely arrives through chaos. It does not compete with loud voices, endless opinions, or constant distractions. Instead, it waits patiently beneath the surface, only becoming visible when the mind is calm enough to notice it. In today's world, silence has become increasingly rare. Every moment is filled with conversations, notifications, music, news, entertainment, and countless demands for our attention. We have become so accustomed to constant stimulation that many people feel uncomfortable the moment everything becomes quiet. Yet it is within that very quietness that the deepest understanding begins to emerge. Noise exists in many forms. It is not only the sound we hear with our ears, but also the endless activity inside our minds. Worries about the future, regrets from the past, comparisons with others, and the pressure to meet expectations create an invisible storm that follows us throughout the day. Even when surrounded by peace, the mind can remain incredibly loud. This internal noise often prevents us from seeing reality as it truly is. Instead of responding wisely, we react emotionally. Instead of understanding ourselves, we become trapped inside endless cycles of fear, doubt, and confusion. Silence interrupts this cycle. The moment external distractions begin to disappear, the mind initially becomes even louder. Thoughts that have been ignored for weeks, months, or even years suddenly demand attention. Unfinished emotions rise to the surface. Hidden fears become impossible to avoid. Many people mistake this discomfort as a sign that silence is harmful, when in reality, it is the beginning of healing. Just as a dusty room appears dirtier when sunlight enters through the window, the mind appears more chaotic when silence shines its light upon everything that has been hidden. As you remain present without escaping into distractions, something remarkable begins to happen. The thoughts that once seemed overwhelming gradually lose their intensity. You begin observing them instead of becoming controlled by them. Instead of believing every fear, you question it. Instead of reacting to every emotion, you learn to witness it. This simple shift changes everything because awareness creates distance between you and your thoughts. You realize that not every idea deserves your attention, and not every emotion deserves your obedience. Silence also exposes the truth about the life we are living. Many people stay so busy that they never stop to ask whether they are moving in the right direction. They continue chasing promotions, possessions, recognition, and approval simply because everyone around them is doing the same. The constant movement creates the illusion of progress, but activity alone does not guarantee purpose. When silence removes the distractions, difficult questions naturally arise. Am I living according to my values? Am I pursuing what truly matters to me? Have I confused success with fulfillment? These questions often have uncomfortable answers, yet they open the door to meaningful change. Another truth that silence reveals is the difference between desire and necessity. Modern life encourages us to believe that happiness depends on constantly acquiring more. More achievements, more possessions, more experiences, more attention. The louder the world becomes, the easier it is to believe that fulfillment exists somewhere outside ourselves. Silence challenges this belief. Sitting quietly with nothing, but your own presence gradually reveals how little is actually required for inner peace. The craving for constant stimulation begins to weaken, replaced by a growing appreciation for simplicity, gratitude, and contentment. Silence also uncovers emotional truths that words often conceal. During conversations, people frequently hide their fears behind confidence, their sadness behind smiles, and their uncertainty behind certainty. Even we become skilled at convincing ourselves that everything is fine, but silence has no interest in maintaining illusions. Without distractions, genuine emotions naturally surface. Grief that has been postponed asks to be acknowledged. Anxiety that has been ignored asks to be understood. Joy that has been forgotten quietly returns. By allowing these emotions to exist without resistance, they begin to transform instead of remaining trapped beneath the surface. The deeper one enters silence. The more clearly priorities begin to change. Small problems that once consumed enormous amounts of energy start appearing insignificant. Arguments lose their importance. The need to prove yourself becomes weaker. The opinions of strangers no longer determine your sense of worth. Instead of constantly seeking certainty from the outside world, you begin trusting the quiet wisdom developing within your own mind. Decisions become less impulsive and more intentional because they are guided by reflection rather than reaction. Patience replaces urgency, understanding replaces assumption, and clarity gradually replaces confusion. Being alone builds emotional strength and inner peace because it teaches a person to stand firmly without depending on constant reassurance from the outside world. Many people spend their lives believing that happiness, confidence, and security come from being surrounded by others. They fear empty rooms, quiet evenings, and moments without conversation because they mistake solitude for isolation. Yet true emotional strength is not measured by how many people stand beside you during easy times. It is measured by how well you can remain steady when no one is there to comfort, encourage, or validate you. Solitude provides the environment where this quiet resilience begins to grow. When a person first spends meaningful time alone, the experience is rarely comfortable. The mind becomes restless because it has become accustomed to constant stimulation. Thoughts appear one after another, carrying memories, worries, disappointments, and unanswered questions. Without distractions, these emotions seem louder than ever. Many people immediately try to escape by reaching for their phones, turning on music, or finding someone to talk to. These habits provide temporary relief, but they prevent the deeper work of understanding what is happening within. Emotional strength begins the moment you choose to remain present instead of running away from your own feelings. Every emotion carries a lesson. Fear reveals where courage is needed. Sadness reveals what has been meaningful. Anger often points toward unresolved pain. Anxiety exposes uncertainty and the desire for control. When you spend time alone without resisting these emotions, you begin observing them with greater honesty. Instead of labeling them as enemies, you start treating them as teachers. This shift transforms your relationship with yourself because you no longer see difficult emotions as signs of weakness. You recognize them as natural experiences that can deepen your understanding if you are willing to listen. Being alone also removes many of the distractions that hide emotional dependence. It becomes easier to notice how often confidence has been borrowed from compliments, approval, or recognition. Many people feel valuable only when someone praises them, agrees with them, or gives them attention. As long as this pattern continues, emotional stability remains fragile because it depends on circumstances that cannot always be controlled. Solitude gradually breaks this dependence by teaching you to appreciate your own company. You learn to enjoy moments without needing constant affirmation, and your sense of worth begins to come from within rather than from the opinions of others. Inner peace develops through this same process of self-acceptance. Peace is not created by the absence of problems, but by the ability to face them without becoming overwhelmed. Solitude strengthens this ability because it provides regular opportunities to reflect before reacting. Instead of allowing every challenge to control your emotions, you begin responding with greater awareness. Difficult situations no longer immediately trigger panic or frustration because you have learned to pause, breathe, and observe. This calm response is not the result of suppressing emotions, but of understanding them deeply enough that they no longer dominate your decisions. There is also a quiet confidence that grows in solitude. It is different from the confidence that comes from applause or public recognition. External confidence often rises and falls according to success or failure, praise or criticism. Inner confidence remains steady because it is rooted in self-knowledge. Spending time alone teaches you what truly matters, what values guide your life, and what principles you refuse to compromise. Once these foundations become clear, you are less likely to be shaken by changing opinions or temporary setbacks. You stop seeking permission to be yourself because you have already accepted who you are. Being alone also teaches patience, one of the greatest forms of emotional strength. Modern life encourages immediate gratification. Every answer, every message, every form of entertainment is available within seconds. As a result, many people struggle to tolerate uncertainty or discomfort. Solitude slows this restless pace. It reminds you that meaningful growth cannot be rushed. Healing takes time. Wisdom develops gradually. Clarity often arrives only after long periods of quiet reflection. Learning to remain patient during this process builds resilience that cannot be gained through shortcuts or constant activity. As emotional strength increases, relationships also begin to change. You no longer approach others from a place of need or fear. Instead of expecting someone else to complete you, rescue you, or constantly reassure you, you bring stability into your connections. Love becomes less about filling emptiness and more about sharing wholeness. Friendships become healthier because they are based on mutual respect rather than emotional dependence. You become capable of offering genuine support without losing yourself in the process, and your presence becomes calmer because it is no longer driven by insecurity or the constant desire for validation. Growth begins when you become comfortable with yourself, because real transformation is impossible while you are constantly trying to become someone else. Many people spend years chasing an ideal version of themselves that has been created by society, comparison, or the expectations of others. They believe they must look different, earn more, achieve more, or receive more approval before they can finally accept themselves. This endless pursuit creates a life driven by insecurity rather than purpose. The moment you become comfortable with who you are, you stop wasting energy pretending to be someone you are not, and that energy becomes available for genuine growth. Being comfortable with yourself does not mean believing that you have nothing left to improve. It does not mean becoming satisfied with laziness or refusing to acknowledge your weaknesses. Instead, it means accepting yourself honestly while remaining committed to becoming better. Acceptance and growth are not opposites. In fact, they depend on each other. When you reject yourself, every attempt at self-improvement becomes rooted in shame and fear. When you accept yourself, improvement becomes an act of respect rather than punishment. You grow because you value yourself, not because you believe you are worthless. Many people fear being alone because solitude removes the distractions that protect them from self-reflection. Without constant entertainment or conversation, they are left face to face with their own thoughts. At first, this experience can feel uncomfortable because it exposes insecurities that have remained hidden beneath busy schedules and endless noise. You begin noticing your fears, your doubts, your regrets, and the habits that quietly shape your daily life. These discoveries are not signs of failure. They are the beginning of awareness. and awareness is always the first step toward meaningful change. Comfort with yourself grows through honesty. It requires looking at your strengths without arrogance and your weaknesses without self-hatred. It means admitting when you have made mistakes instead of pretending they never happened. It means recognizing your limitations while believing in your ability to improve. This balance is difficult because the human mind often moves toward extremes. Some people constantly criticize themselves, believing they are never enough. Others avoid responsibility by refusing to acknowledge their flaws. Neither approach leads to growth. True progress begins when you can observe yourself with fairness, compassion, and courage. Comparison is one of the greatest obstacles to becoming comfortable with yourself. Every day, people compare their appearance, careers, relationships, possessions, and achievements with those of others. Social media has made this habit even stronger by presenting carefully selected moments that rarely reflect the full reality of someone's life. Constant comparison creates the illusion that everyone else is happier, more successful, or more fulfilled. As long as you measure your worth against someone else's journey, you will never fully appreciate your own path. Growth requires attention, and comparison constantly steals that attention away from the only life you are capable of changing. When you become comfortable with yourself, your decisions also begin to change. Instead of asking what will impress other people, you start asking what aligns with your values. Instead of chasing every opportunity simply because others admire it, you become more intentional about where you invest your time and energy. This clarity reduces unnecessary stress because your choices are no longer controlled by external expectations. You stop trying to fit into places where you do not belong, and you begin creating a life that reflects your authentic character rather than your public image. Another important part of self-comfort is learning to forgive yourself. Everyone carries memories of poor decisions, missed opportunities, and moments they wish they could change. Holding on to these experiences with endless guilt only keeps you trapped in the past. Forgiveness does not erase responsibility, nor does it justify harmful actions. It simply allows you to learn from your mistakes without allowing them to define your identity forever. Every lesson becomes more valuable when it leads to wisdom instead of lifelong regret. As this comfort deepens, confidence begins to develop naturally. It is no longer based on praise, achievements, or the approval of strangers. It comes from knowing yourself well enough to remain steady through both success and failure. You become less defensive because criticism no longer threatens your identity. You become less anxious because you no longer feel pressured to prove your worth at every moment. Challenges become opportunities to learn rather than evidence that you are not enough. Growth continues because you are willing to face discomfort without losing respect for yourself, allowing every experience to shape your character instead of weakening your spirit. Discipline in solitude creates confidence in public because the strength that people admire is almost always built in moments that nobody ever sees. The world often celebrates the performance but rarely witnesses the preparation. People applaud the athlete standing on the podium, the speaker standing confidently on the stage, the entrepreneur leading a successful company, or the artist creating remarkable work. What remains invisible are the countless mornings spent practicing alone, the sacrifices made without recognition, the mistakes corrected in private, and the commitment maintained when there was no audience to offer encouragement. Confidence is not created by public attention. It is earned through private discipline. Many people believe confidence comes from praise, popularity, or repeated success. They think that once enough people admire them, confidence will naturally appear. This belief is fragile because anything built upon the opinions of others can disappear just as quickly. Compliments can stop, recognition can fade, circumstances can change overnight. If confidence depends entirely on external approval, it rises and falls with every opinion. Discipline offers something far more reliable. It creates a confidence that comes from knowing you have done the work, regardless of whether anyone noticed. Solitude provides the perfect environment for discipline because it removes the distractions of performance. When no one is watching, your actions reveal your true character. It is easy to work hard when there is applause waiting at the finish line. It is much more difficult to continue when there is no immediate reward. Waking up early to train, reading one more chapter after a long day, practicing a skill repeatedly, or choosing healthy habits over temporary comfort often happens in complete silence. These moments may appear ordinary, but they shape the person you eventually become. Discipline in solitude also develops integrity. Integrity means your actions remain consistent, whether people are watching or not. A person with integrity does not behave differently simply because the audience has changed. They keep their promises even when breaking them would be easy. They continue improving even when nobody is measuring their progress. This consistency creates a powerful sense of self-respect because your confidence no longer depends on appearances. You trust yourself because you have repeatedly demonstrated that your actions match your intentions. One of the greatest challenges of modern life is the constant temptation of distraction. Every moment offers opportunities to avoid discomfort through entertainment, endless scrolling, unnecessary conversations, or activities that provide instant gratification. Discipline requires choosing what is meaningful over what is merely pleasurable. This decision becomes especially important when you are alone because there is nobody to remind you of your responsibilities. Every choice becomes entirely your own. The ability to stay focused in these quiet moments strengthens your willpower, making it easier to remain committed even when life becomes more demanding. Every act of private discipline leaves evidence in your own mind. Each completed workout reminds you that you can overcome laziness. Every hour spent studying proves that you are capable of sustained effort. Every difficult conversation you prepare for strengthens your ability to face uncertainty. Every promise you keep to yourself builds another layer of trust. Over time, these small victories accumulate into something much greater than individual accomplishments. They create an identity. You begin seeing yourself as someone who follows through, someone who remains committed, someone who can rely on their own determination. This inner certainty naturally becomes visible in public situations. When you have prepared thoroughly, you no longer need to pretend to be confident. A speaker who has practiced for countless hours does not depend entirely on the audience's reaction. An athlete who has trained consistently does not rely on luck alone. A leader who has developed discipline through years of quiet effort remains composed during difficult decisions because preparation has replaced panic. Their confidence is not an act. It is the natural result of repeated commitment carried out in private. Discipline also teaches resilience. Even the most dedicated individuals experience failure, disappointment, and setbacks. Solitude provides the opportunity to respond constructively rather than emotionally. Instead of seeking excuses or blaming circumstances, disciplined individuals quietly examine what went wrong, adjust their approach, and begin again. This habit reduces the fear of failure because every mistake becomes another lesson instead of a permanent defeat. Confidence grows stronger each time you recover because you realize your strength lies not in avoiding challenges, but in continuing despite them. Public confidence often appears effortless, but genuine confidence is rarely effortless. It is supported by hundreds of unseen decisions made long before anyone notices the results. Every disciplined morning, every focused hour, every difficult choice, and every moment of perseverance contributes to a quiet belief that cannot be manufactured through positive thinking alone. When challenges arise, you remain steady not because you believe you are incapable of failure, but because you know you have prepared yourself with patience, consistency, and unwavering commitment. In the moments when nobody was watching, the strongest relationship you will ever build is the one with yourself, because every experience in life is filtered through your own mind. Before you connect with another person, pursue a dream, overcome a challenge, or face a disappointment, you are first in conversation with yourself. Your thoughts shape your decisions, your beliefs influence your actions, and your attitude determines how you respond to success and failure. No relationship in your life is more constant than the one you have with yourself. Friends may come and go. Circumstances may change. Opportunities may appear and disappear. Yet you remain with yourself through every moment of your life, making this relationship the foundation upon which every other relationship is built. Many people dedicate enormous amounts of time to understanding others, while spending very little time understanding themselves. They know the preferences, opinions, and expectations of family, friends, and colleagues, yet they struggle to answer simple questions about their own values, fears, or purpose. They constantly seek approval because they have never learned to appreciate their own company. As a result, their happiness becomes dependent on external circumstances. A compliment lifts their confidence, while criticism destroys it. Acceptance brings joy, while rejection creates deep insecurity. When your relationship with yourself is weak, your emotional stability becomes controlled by forces outside your control. Building a strong relationship with yourself begins with honesty. It requires looking beyond the image you present to the world and facing the person you truly are. This process is not always comfortable because it reveals both strengths and weaknesses. You recognize habits that hold you back, fears that quietly influence your decisions, and dreams that have been ignored for years. At the same time, you also discover qualities you may have underestimated: your resilience, your compassion, your curiosity, and your ability to grow. Honest self-awareness creates a foundation for genuine confidence because it is based on truth rather than illusion. Spending time alone plays an essential role in strengthening this relationship. Solitude removes many of the distractions that prevent self-reflection. Without constant conversations, entertainment, or social expectations, your attention naturally turns inward. You begin listening to your thoughts instead of escaping from them. You notice patterns in your emotions and behaviors that previously went unnoticed. Instead of constantly asking others who you should become, you begin discovering the answer for yourself. This quiet understanding cannot be given by anyone else because it grows through personal reflection and lived experience. Trust is another essential part of every strong relationship, including the one you have with yourself. Just as trust between two people develops through consistency, self-trust grows through keeping promises to yourself. Every time you commit to waking up early, practicing a skill, exercising, studying, or following through on an important goal, you strengthen your belief in your own reliability. On the other hand, repeatedly breaking promises to yourself weakens this trust. Over time, you begin doubting your own ability to remain committed. Confidence does not come from making ambitious plans. It comes from proving, day after day, that your actions match your intentions. A healthy relationship with yourself also requires self-compassion. Many people speak to themselves with a level of criticism they would never direct toward another human being. They magnify every mistake, dwell on every failure, and allow guilt to define their identity. Growth becomes difficult because every setback is interpreted as evidence of personal inadequacy. Self-compassion does not mean avoiding responsibility or making excuses. It means recognizing that mistakes are part of being human and choosing to learn from them instead of allowing them to become permanent labels. Treating yourself with patience creates the emotional safety necessary for continuous improvement. Another important aspect of this relationship is learning to enjoy your own presence. Many people fear being alone because they have never developed comfort with themselves. Silence feels uncomfortable because it exposes thoughts they have been avoiding. As they gradually become more familiar with solitude, they discover that peace does not require constant activity or endless company. They learn to appreciate quiet walks, thoughtful reading, reflection, and moments of stillness. These experiences strengthen independence because happiness becomes less dependent on external entertainment or validation. The stronger your relationship with yourself becomes, the healthier your relationships with others naturally become as well. You stop expecting people to complete you because you no longer feel incomplete. You communicate more honestly because you are no longer pretending to be someone else. You establish healthier boundaries because you respect your own well-being. Love becomes an expression of wholeness rather than a desperate attempt to fill emotional emptiness. Friendships become deeper because they are built on authenticity instead of approval. Through self-understanding, self-trust, patience, and consistent care, you create an inner foundation that remains steady regardless of changing circumstances, allowing every decision, relationship, and challenge to be guided by clarity instead of insecurity.